Kingdom Hearts is like a pretty good game. It's a pretty good game series. They're all at least pretty fun to play. But the thing that's probably discussed the most about the KH series is its plot and story, which definitely has its ups and its downs. Its highs are really high, and it does stuff that really can only exist in this crazy crossover.
Did you forget who you're talking to? I am the Lord of the Dead!
No wonder no one wants to die.
You are fired!
But like, a lot of the time the script leaves a lot to be desired.
Because I'm you. No, I'm me. I'm me, he says.
And while we're talking about shortcomings of the script, a lot of people have the criticism that Kingdom Hearts just does not know what to do with its female characters.
Kyrie!
What difference does one little light make?
Let go of me! Let go!
Because I went into your memories and—
Let me explain this.
Sora!
But you know, so many more characters have been introduced to this game since its humble beginnings, and the interactions and connections between these characters has really been the meat and potatoes of this story. So while revisiting the games and thinking about these characters, I was asking myself just one question. How many times does Kingdom Hearts pass the Bechdel test?
Nobody react to what I'm about to tell you.
So what is the Bechdel test? Well, the Bechdel test is this test used by screenwriters and media critics to determine whether their script has diverse female characters with their own agency. To pass the Bechdel test, a script needs 3 things. It needs 2 or more female characters, for those female characters to have a conversation with each other, and for that conversation not to be about their relationship with a male character. There's also a 4th rule that wasn't in the original test but has become a popular addition, which is that those characters need to have names. In truth though, this test is really not the end-all be-all of female representation, and it's really more of a fun exercise than any sort of feminist reading of media. The test wasn't even originally written for this purpose. It was actually written by a queer writer who wanted to determine whether a script had a believable possibility of having lesbians in it. The Bechdel test first appeared in the 1985 strip of D Word to Watch Out For, a long-writing comic by cartoonist and writer Alison Bechdel. The comic depicts 2 queer women discussing movies. One remarks that she will only see a movie if it meets the certain set of requirements involving female characters. So yeah. Just like all great inventions, it came out of the need of wanting to imagine 2 people smooching. But hey, if there's any queer people that are watching that want to use this as an excuse to imagine 2 ladies pairing off, who am I to stop you? Nevertheless, the test stuck around in popular culture, and so we're going to use it to comb through the entire series to see exactly every instance where KH passes. So let's just dive right into it. Let's dream drop into it. Let's recoat it. The Kingdom Hearts series as a whole has kind of an uphill battle when it comes to passing this test. Most of the games follow the relative POV of the player character, which is almost always a boy. Most of the characters in the game are communicating and interacting with our protagonists and rarely have their own side combos. Once Sora arrives in a world, he makes every problem in that world his business to solve. So while Sora is having interesting conversations with female characters with agency, we rarely see those female characters interacting with other women. In KH1, I only counted this happening twice, both in Disney World. The first was the scene in Wonderland where the Queen of Hearts put Alice on trial.
Well, have you anything to say in your defense?
Of course. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. You may be queen, but I'm afraid that doesn't give you the right to be so mean.
Silence! You dare defy me?
And the second is when Ursula is telling Ariel about Otherworld.
You called, my dear?
You're Ursula. Well, I was just wondering if—
It's all right. Helping others is what I live for. Let me guess, you wish to see other worlds. That shouldn't be too hard.
I really thought that there'd be at least once with Traverse Town and the Final Fantasy cast, but Yuffie and Aerith aren't in the same room for most of the first visit, and they're almost always just relaying information to Sora, Donald, and Goofy. As for the Kingdom Hearts original cast, at this point in the series, there's really only 4, with Sora, Riku, Kairi, and Ansem, with only one of those being a girl. In Rechain of Memories, it also had the same 2 points, Ariel and Ursula, and the Queen of Hearts and Alice. Seeing as how Recom is mostly a retread of the original, going through Sora's memories of the first game, this is not too surprising in the Disney worlds. However, Recom introduces us to 2 new KH original female characters, in the form of Larxene and Naminé. One of the fun things about this game is that you actually cut away to cut scenes of the organization members scheming in the background. Unfortunately, Larxene and Naminé only share a couple of conversations, and they are all about nominations. And they're all about Naminé's connection to Sora.
Are you feeling awful about tinkering with Sora's memory? Or maybe you...
Cut it out, Larxene.
So, unfortunately, these don't count. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a much longer game and introduces more original and returning characters relative to the previous games. So there's a lot more to go through. First off, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, that is Kairi. Throughout KH2, Kairi has 4 interactions with other named female characters, but 3 of those 4, she's talking about her connection with either Riku and or Sora.
Do you remember those boys who used to hang out with us?
Riku?
Yeah.
What a romantic story.
We'll be together every day. Right, Sora?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to cut Kairi some slack here for a little bit, because obviously the thesis of this entire game series is, that famous line from the first game.
My friends are my power.
And, the whole game series is about the connections that we make and the relationships that we garner through our adventures and how that makes us stronger. And up until this point in the game, Kairi has 2 friends, and they're both boys, so the last instance is her being freed from her prison by Naminé, but during all this, they don't exchange any words, and they just hold hands. Aside from Kairi, these fairy ladies bicker about whose side to be on 3 times in Radiant Garden / Hollow Bastion. They have names, I just don't really remember them. And in terms of other Final Fantasy characters, Yuffie and Aerith interact this time. Once when they have this inaudible conversation during the 1000 Heartless battle. And once when they talk about how the computer system is fixed.
Things are settling down in town. The only Heartless left anywhere are the local variety. And it looks like there are fewer than before.
Now if we can just get those 3 back in one piece.
Of course, Aerith's contribution to that conversation is to wonder if Sora, Donald, and Goofy are okay. So, kind of ends up talking about how it relates to a boy. I'll give that one a half point. Come on, Aerith. Also in Cage 2 in Yensid's Tower, the fairies talk to each other. They first talk about what outfit to give Sora.
Oh, that will never do.
Now, dears.
But don't you like this better?
And then they talk about how they're remembering Maleficent coming back.
Haven't we seen this somewhere before? Yes, dear.
Speaking of Maleficent, she has 2 Disney World conversations. The first is a conversation between Maleficent and Minnie about Maleficent's plans to take over Disney Castle.
Just what are you doing here, Maleficent?
Ah, Queen Minnie. Radiant as always. I'm here on a property venture. I want this castle for my own.
The second is when she schemes with Lock, Shock, and Barrel in Halloween Town.
This is a pleasant surprise. That fool Jack brought Sora and the others with him. Now we can deal with all of them at once.
What do you want us to do?
Revenge before pleasure, after all.
What kind of revenge?
Between Lock, Shock, and 3 Smoking Barrels here, I'm not really sure which one's which, or which one is a barrel, but I do know that one of them is a girl, and she does have a conversation with Maleficent back and forth. So for the purposes of our exercise, this one's a point. In 358 Days Over 2, we spend the whole campaign as Roxas clocking in the 9 to 5 with the organization. The organization also really doesn't seem too interested in meeting any affirmative action quotas because they only ever have one female employee on not payroll at a time. In terms of KH originals, we have the return of Larxene, who very early in the game is sent off to Castle Oblivion to die.
I refuse to lose. There's such a bunch of losers. I think I'm fainting? No, this isn't the way. I won't allow.
We also get the introduction of Xion. But in traditional KH fashion, both of our best friends are boys. So not a lot of girl talk there. None of the Disney worlds this time have any, but this kind of makes sense as this is the game with the fewest amount of Disney worlds, and it's kind of a plot point that the organization doesn't want to get noticed by any of the residents of the worlds, which doesn't lead to a lot of conversation between our main cast and the Disney characters. But thankfully, it all comes together near the end with a conversation between Xion and Naminé about the fate of Xion's life. She has to choose whether she wants to die and bring Sora back, or live out her life as part of the organization. This does have a lot of conversation about Roxas and Sora and how Xion feels about them, but it's absolutely about her making her own decisions and following her own agency. So even if it doesn't strictly pass, I think it's a good enough scene that I'll give it a point. I also feel really bad for Xion this whole game. She wakes up one day with no memories and is forced to work in an office with only men. I understand why she took every single sick day off. She ultimately ends up choosing to unalive herself instead of working in that workspace again. And, you know, I think a lot of us can sympathize with that decision. Birth by Sleep was pulling ahead of the whole series. Because you play 1/3 of the game as a woman, there's a lot more instances where this game passes over the others. Aqua is really the MVP of this exercise, and I imagine she's going to continue to be as we move forward into the future of this series. On Aqua's adventure, Aqua has conversations with 4 women. Maleficent, Minnie, Fairy Godmother, and the Grand Councilwoman. But seeing as the Grand Councilwoman is named the Grand Councilwoman, I don't think that super counts since they have to be named characters. Unless that's not like a title and she's really first named the Grand, last name Councilwoman, which is possible. She's an alien, so like who am I to judge their culture's naming conventions? Apart from those 4, she also interacts with Cinderella a few times, honestly kind of rizzing her up each time.
This is what happens when you go against my wishes.
The darkness in their hearts overtook them. Go.
I see that one passing the original Bechdel Test intent, if you know what I mean.
Go.
The stepfamily in Cinderella's world also have conversations between each other and with Aqua a few times. And to round out the princess stuff, Aqua meets Snow White, but they never talk. Continuing Aqua's adventures in Radiant Garden, she has that iconic conversation with baby Kairi.
Are these for me?
I picked you some flowers. Thank you for saving me.
Oh, they're lovely. You're so sweet.
And then shortly after, Kairi has a conversation with her grandmother.
Grandma?
What is it?
Could you tell me that story?
Again, dear?
During Ventus's adventure, the fairies have speaking parts, but they're always kind of talking to Ven and not really each other. One of them exclaims at Maleficent at one point.
Maleficent!
But Maleficent doesn't respond and talks to Ven instead. I didn't count any instances during Terra's adventure that counts. This one didn't have a single conversation. I thought Minnie and Maleficent would squeak one out for the win again, but they don't exchange any words. This one's the shortest of the games I'm mentioning, and this is probably the one where I'm stretching the rules of the test the most. Look, the whole game, Aqua's basically stuck in what is essentially hell, with the only person I talk to being a shirtless fucking rat. So it kind of makes it tricky to have conversations about her own agency under these conditions. But she does have a lot of conversations with herself in this game. Literally and metaphysically. At one point, Aqua looks into a mirror and she is met with the evil Aqua. This kind of plays off of the evil counterpart she sees of both of her friends. It's evil Terra, evil Ventus. So whether this is a real magical aberration or more of like a metaphorical manifestation of Aqua's own fears is, up to interpretation. But she does have a conversation with it. And, seeing as this is the only female-led game in the series, I feel like it's a shame not to pass her for it. This one gets by quite a bit on the Disney stuff. Rapunzel has 2 conversations with her mother. Anna and Elsa share a scene 3 times, but one of them is when they're babies and they don't chat.
You kind of set off an eternal winter? Everywhere. Everywhere?
And to round out the Disney worlds, the members of Big Hero 6 are having a conversation over top of each other over their comms.
Yeah, Hero. I think there's a way to flip my electromagnetic.
Of course, there's 4 boys in that conversation, but 2 girls are in there and they're talking. Let's pretend they're talking to each other. That's a half point. As a side note to all these games, I'll just put this out there right now. I'm sure something in the 100 Acre Woods counts, but seeing as I don't really know what the preferred pronouns of Huffalump is, can't really say for sure. And finally, our MVP Aqua has a short conversation with Kairi over the fact that they've met before.
I guess it must have worked. The spell that I cast on you.
I'm sorry. Those days are hazy for me.
This is actually the scene that inspired me to make this video. When I saw this scene, I was like, oh, that's so nice. The whole scene, everyone's like reminiscing about how they know each other, how their webs are all connected, how like through their adventures, all their hearts are linked. And it was nice to see that, the 2 girls in the room connected, and it was like, yeah, they do know each other. They do have each other's back. This one is really Kairi's game. I mean, not as much as 0.2 is Aqua's game, but Kairi is the narrative through line that links all of these rhythm game sections together, so, I'm gonna give it to her. In this one, it passes twice, with Kairi having a conversation with Fairy Godmother.
Yen Sid sent you?
That's right. To find Sora, we need 3 keys. First, Riku, and then, of course, there's you, dear Kairi.
It's about Sora, but more about their quest to go find him. So not really their relationship, but more like what they gotta do to get Sora back. The second instance in Melody of Memory is where Fairy Gma and Kairi talk to the star.
We found you. We've been searching all over for you, my dear.
Do I know you?
Who I'm assuming is a woman, but it's also a fucking collection of animated Christmas lights, so who knows? So what have we learned from all this? Basically, that like all of these games passed, so really they should be taught in Gender Studies 101 classes.
Oh, my feminist literature books. Not my feminist literature books.
Or maybe that this is all a largely pointless exercise, but one that has embedded itself so deeply into my brain that I had to put it down on paper and then record it for video. Honestly, I like where the series is going and having more fun with its female characters, and I like the steps it's taking into connecting its characters further, like Aqua and Kairi or Xion and Namine. The series is taking on the theme of playing as multiple characters in each of its games, and I'm excited for future installments to play more of these character stories. And like we determined, Kingdom Hearts is not a perfect game series, but like I said, this is kind of a pointless exercise, so I don't really actually have a thesis or a takeaway. I guess I'll just end the video there. So I guess if you're a woman, go talk to another woman. And if you're not a woman, start a podcast. I don't know.